isn't any regular heat. This is nuclear heat. Live from the 93.7 The Ticket studios in the heart of Lincoln, America. Bringing you the latest from the Square Circle on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Here is your host, Jake Bockoven.
Yes, fresh off a hot Royal Rumble, we're ready to talk some wrestling here on Nuclear Heat. Your WWE Week in Review. Of course, SmackDown and Raw also happened this week, but when there's a Royal Rumble, that's what you lead with, so that's what we're going to go with. But I do have to ask you this, and we're not, if you're listening, you probably know the spoilers, so you can look it up, so I'm not hiding any of the results. We're just breaking them down and analyzing them. So I got to start with this, Augie, as we welcome you into the show. More shocked by Jey Uso's Royal Rumble win or Luka being traded for the Lakers for a bag of dimes?
Well, let's just say, luckily, we're not Dallas Mavericks fans as well. No, they're both evenly as surprised. I was asleep before the Luka trade happened, woke up to like 5 text messages, and I'm like, no, they're joking. It happened. Went to bed. Spoiler, a little disappointed at Jay. Surprised, disappointed, whatever you want to call it at Jay. So I guess, I don't know, pretty even. But I think more maybe NBA terms, Luka, especially for those Dallas Mavericks fan, you had a top 3 player, and then they ship you off for a 32-year-old that can't seem to stay healthy. Yeah,
very strange in the NBA. It was such a shocking trade that, people that, I've had people talk to me that usually haven't talked NBA to me before. Like, it made its way outside of the NBA to be like, that's an awful deal. So it's very strange. We'll see. Maybe it works out for the Mavericks one way or the other. The Lakers seem to always have one of the top players for the decade coming in the future. So I'm a Celtics fan, so I'm not very excited about that. But in any case, I know you're excited. The Eagles preparing to play Super Bowl here pretty soon. So there's the ups and downs of sports. And there were certainly a lot of ups and downs in the Royal Rumble. As usual, one of my favorite events of the year. Incredible pop for some of the returning superstars. Some surprising moments. It's just a very good show altogether as we kind of get ready for WrestleMania. Once again, we'll go over to some of the details of Raw and SmackDown that maybe might still matter, I suppose, moving forward. A lot of that was to set up the Royal Rumble and try to second guess who is going to win. So let's just start with the women's Royal Rumble. We'll get to the men's here in a bit. We've already talked about Jey Uso. Such a variety of thoughts on everything that went on there. But we did open up the Royal Rumble, and I thought that they did a very good job this year, really emphasizing the stats. They don't really do that too often. They've been fixated on Drew McIntyre beating Sami Zayn. They like to keep that count going, but there's not a whole lot, and I wish there was more. In AEW, that was going to be the their calling card and be the difference between them and WWE was more stat keeping. And I think that experiment went, they still do it a little bit, but it's just, there's a certain way to do it. The Royal Rumble's perfect for a bunch of stats because regardless of what you're going to do, when you're going to put on a match that's going to last an hour, plus you're going to have people that stick in there. You're going to have number of eliminations and amount of times going into Royal Rumble. So there's a lot of stats to be there. And I give WWE a lot of credit just for the graphic overlay, just all the little stats that you were getting. Is a lot of fun to kind of think, oh, this could be their moment. This could be the big, Royal Rumble moment for this person. Now, there were certain ones where it was like, that's the best you got. Like, there was somebody that came in and was like, it's been in 6 Royal Rumbles and lasted 15 minutes last year. And I was like, that's the best stat you have? That's probably not good. But for the most part, it was very cool. So I did like that. What did you think about kind of the stat keeping? Royal Rumble seems to be more the event for that than any other in WWE.
Yeah, it was pretty nice because, sometimes wrestlers get lost in the mix, right? So you don't always know who's really in, who's out. But it really stinks for people who, like me, like subtitles. So the subtitles were kind of going over. So I'm kind of, looking up over it. And I'm like, oh, wait, I can't do that. And so it's nice. So like I said, especially for the men's, because there's just a lot of actions, guys in and out. The women's, kind of packed the ring at times. So it's nice to see how many. And I didn't know who some of the people were, wrestlers were. So it's nice to kind of see who they are, where they're from. So I thought that was interesting. I've seen some complaints where people thought it was a little distracting, but for people who like to have things on screen, like, especially with me for subtitles, I thought it was a good addition there, and I hope it stays.
Yeah, I hope so too. I did like that portion of it. Going to the women's Royal Rumble here, Io Sky starting up with Liv Morgan. So, always important in these things is the order and who you start off with. Io Sky, interesting. She always gets a good fan reaction. And of course, Liv Morgan has just kind of dominated WWE for the last year. So I thought that was a good place to start. Once you look through the entire field, I always kind of think too, maybe you could get a little bit more pop to start off with, maybe with somebody. But, these are two women that at any time entering the Royal Rumble would be, I wouldn't say favorites, but, people that we would figure would play into the mix. So it's good to kind of get the action started right away with two veterans that have been in plenty of Rumbles and getting rolling. What did you think about the start, the choice of these two? Again, this is kind of fun. This is the fun part of the Royal Rumble. You just break down every part of it.
Yeah, I think it is really important. I think they went with two great wrestlers, two former champs, world champs. It's important because the first two also get the most time to actually one-on-one wrestle, because no distractions, nobody else. They get, a minute and 30 kind of to do it. So they kind of get the most time. So I thought it was good. And they started off and they have their rivalries. I think they just competed a couple months ago for the women's world championship, Io and Liv. So, it's a great way to start it. And, I was hoping, not that she didn't, but, that Io would have a very long and successful Royal Rumble. And, her coming in at number one, kind of like, all right, she's going to kind of be the Iron Woman of this.
Yeah. Yeah. And they did. I mean, they ended up having an Iron Woman in this for sure, in Roxanne Perez, who came in third. And that's where I'll have my first problem with this and it's nothing against Roxanne Perez. It's a good, it's a good, and she's got mixing it up in NXT. Just felt a lot of NXT. There's a lot of NXT. They even have an NXT moment where some of the NXT women stared down some of the WWE women. Again, that's fine. But Roxanne Perez now holds the Royal Rumble record for a single Royal Rumble, having stayed in the ring the longest time. She's not even actively on, the main roster. Again, maybe a detail. You say, well, it doesn't matter. It'll be broken next year. Probably will. Also, it's something that can kind of put her over once she gets to the main roster. But once you get to those final three, those final four, whatever it is, and usually it's final four, they kind of skipped that this year because they were eliminating people to get down to three. But again, spoiler alert, when it comes down to Roxanne and Charlotte, it's kind of written on the wall of what's going to happen. Now, of course, this might have been part of a setup for the men's because they did a similar setup in the men's where it came down to the final two and you think, okay, well, I can bet the house on this. And, having maybe saw the women's play out that way. So maybe there is some, some thought behind that and maybe to do that. But I'm no bigger a fan of Roxanne Perez today than I was before. I mean, she didn't just blow my mind out of the water. Jordan Grace, who came in later, and did a Death Valley driver to Piper Niven. Oh, yeah. That was incredibly impressive. So there's some big spots. And again, it's just someone I'm somewhat unfamiliar with in Roxanne Perez. And you could say, well, you should watch more NXT. Well, I prefer not to watch NXT. I prefer to kind of get the same idea that most people are when they're watching the Royal Rumble and they see them is like, oh, this is new. I kind of want to see it. But I'm a little bit picky about how successful she was.
Yeah. So to kind of ease your pain on that, it was announced that she is now on the main roster. So this was kind of her debut. Her transition debut, which tells us, they're probably going to push her to the moon, here. She went from number 3 to number, her and Charlotte, as you mentioned it. So that's kind of good there. Yeah. I didn't know half of these contestants in the women's side of it because they do use NXT so often on that. She didn't have really that many memorable spots other than the whole NXT WWE thing, the horsewomen NXT thing that you were talking about there. So I can agree with that on it. And it is hard because we're so picky as WWE fans, right? Because we get tired of the Charlotte Flairs, right? Constantly coming in, having the ability to go into the main event right away. And then WWE tries to give us these homegrown new talent. And we're not always so excited about things at Jey Uso and things in there. So, it is kind of a double-edged sword there, but I'm all right with it. I mean, especially on the women's side, because I feel like we've talked about it for so long that there's just not that much star power, outside of Charlotte, Becky, Rhea, Liv. They kind of have to recycle it. So if they can get more, and they know the Royal Rumble is probably the most watched pay-per-view outside of WrestleMania. So this is the opportunity to do that. And I mean, there are major problems I had towards the end of the Royal Rumble. Roxanne, I thought was kind of fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, to everybody, it's kind of their own different people, certainly have different feelings about it. Again, it's not something that's going to keep me up at night, but it's just, I like a little bit of tension at the end of the Royal Rumble, especially when you get down to the final few. And I felt like I was, I kind of knew who was going to win.
Yeah.
Notable that Jade Cargill, by the way, did not show up in this Women's Royal Rumble. I know some people thought that was going to happen, but as we kind of make our way through it, interesting notes that kind of happened throughout it. Lyra Valkyria was in the ring early on, eliminated by Ivy Nile. Therefore, we think Ivy Nile will probably be challenging Lyra Valkyria for the Intercontinental Championship there. And still, like, Ivy Nile, I thought looked impressive in what she was asked to do. But I don't know. I mean, usually when you're going to put the belt on somebody, Lyra's probably going to win that feud. And so again, it's just more, I think, character work that needs to go in there. And I didn't see necessarily anything that jumped out to me from her in this matchup. And again, you look for crowd reaction, especially in the Royal Rumble. Didn't seem to be all that interesting.
No, and we talked about it. They kept pushing her, right? She was runner up in this, runner up in that, and then they gave her the Intercontinental Championship for the women's side. And then you look at it, and she's the second elimination in the Royal Rumble. You can't have that. If you're pushing somebody kind of down our throats in a way, which Triple H is doing, and then you have her last like 3 minutes in the Royal. I mean, she probably lasted like 5 minutes, but she was the second elimination because I think BFAB was the first elimination.
I think BFAB was first.
So that, and I think that's like kind of what was around the World Wide Web there, was that Lyra kind of didn't have a good showing, which is surprising because Queen of the Ring, like all these tournaments they put her in, she's lasted till the end. And then on this one, she just kind of got, by Ivy Nile of all people, who really hasn't done anything other than had a feud with Maxine Dupree, who hasn't done anything. So that kind of tells you they're kind of in trouble because Dakota Kai, who I wanted to win, wasn't even in the Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
So you kind of missed it on those feuds and the ability, because on the SmackDown side with Chelsea Green, she's still going with Michin. We actually like Dakota Kai. Why couldn't, they have ran that back and they're choosing to go in a different direction with it already.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I think a lot of it's just still, as much as people love Triple H's booking, and they might be changing their mind here after this, is that, a lot of time it does lean heavily into NXT. And I get it. That's kind of his brainchild, and that's kind of what he's, known for. And his booking there really helped him to kind of his spot in the WWE. But it was a little bit much for me. And Valkyria, seemingly since she's been brought over, has just been kind of this NXT, gold model or whatever that you push to the top. And I haven't seen it. And it's interesting because over the years too, you're usually, look at Carmelo. You usually have to go through like your lumps. Once you get to the main roster, maybe you can have a nice debut, but at some point they're going to want to beat you down before they kind of push you up the ladder. It's not like she lasted the whole way and won the Royal Rumble here, so maybe we're getting too much into it, but just kind of interesting note in there. Some other people that I thought were interesting: Lash Legend, another NXT superstar, but she looks to be the real deal. That's one that I could see them pushing in the future just because of how big she is. And she stands out in the roster. And I don't want to put this carefully, but like not big like Piper Niven. She looks like she could bench press me. So that's something that they, definitely somebody they have to work with moving forward, is that she not only didn't stand out in a bad way, but stood out in a good way in the ring next to a bunch of WWE superstars. Will be good for her moving forward. Bianca Belair entered at 10, Bayley at 12. Like I said, Piper Niven came in there at 13. Ended up eliminating Chelsea Green. And my thoughts on eliminating Chelsea Green is the match was more entertaining with her in it than without it. Yep. She had a couple spots that, again, even when she's not in action, can kind of entertain you a little bit, trying to fit in with a group that was kind of starting to get together.
That was hilarious.
So that was interesting. And Piper Niven eliminating her, I don't know, sometimes you have these breakups and the feud gets going. I don't know if that's necessarily going to last. Do that, I guess, to them at some point. You expect to see that, but that was interesting. But again, Chelsea Green, to me, and another thing that you could tell here is she was getting a crowd reaction.
Oh yeah.
And once you took her out, there was There's a little bit there. They kind of got the stars in once he kind of hit the 20s, but for a little bit there, it was kind of missing a little star power, which Chelsea Green has.
Yeah, and she just, she has that comedy act, but she's a champ, because she can actually wrestle, and I feel like they didn't really give her the opportunity to wrestle. And this, she had a couple good moves, but it was because somebody else, hurt somebody, and so she went in to kind of clean up on that. But I'm glad you pointed out I don't remember who it was all gathering there, and she kind of walks up and she's like, "Oh, hey guys, I can," and they just turn on her. I thought that was comedic gold. But I agree. I thought for the most part this women's rumble was good, right? Really good. And then they just do certain things like this, and there's more, we'll get down the line that just, it, like you said, it just feels like it dies. It just feels like that's it. It just took the wind out of everything. And when you take fan favorites out, what happens? People don't have a reason to root. And I'll say, for as fun as it is, if you watched the match, there was a lot of botches. There was a lot of, there was a moment where Bianca was getting headbutted into Naomi, and you like I don't remember who was doing it. I think it was Jordan Grace. That we'll get ahead, but she's kind of stomping all of them. She's doing it to Bianca. You see Bianca start just laughing, and she's getting her head bashed in, and Naomi does too. And you're just like, it's funny, but
the camera angles.
Yeah, the camera angles get it, and a lot of missed hits on this. And I know the camera angle is supposed to do them favors, but man, it was bad. like Bianca again, she was getting stomped on by somebody, and you see her kind of just look up and it's like, oh, I'm supposed to be over here. She just gets up. The girl
I do remember that.
The girl still stomping. I think it was Lash.
She no-sells it. Yeah, right.
And Bianca just looks up and just kind of
gets
away. Up, and the girl's still stomping, and you're like, I know there's more people, but the camera caught that,
Yeah.
And I don't know how Triple H, talks to them or whatever, but I know in Vince McMahon's day, that would have been, sorry, I shouldn't have said his name, but that would have been a big no-no, on there. So I'm a little curious to see if they can clean some of that stuff up, because I noticed that a lot.
Yeah. That's interesting. I don't think I noticed it to the point that frustrated me, but I did notice that spot that you're talking about, especially. But Jordan Grace, of course, coming over, we kind of mentioned her having lifted Piper Niven, and she just looked fantastic. I mean, she's buff as heck too.
Oh, yeah.
So she looked really good. Of course, that's under the TNA umbrella. She was in the Royal Rumble last year, but this is the first time, I suppose, as they said, in under the WWE umbrella. So she had a pretty good performance there. The biggest pop of the night, and I think on the men's or women's side, was Alexa Bliss returning after 2 years. Not only that, but a very cool jacket, which the camera cut away from. But it would have been, it's like an iconic moment that they just missed.
Yeah.
Which is that she had a Fiend jacket on. It said Fiend with the R, in between there to be friend. And so, it was just a payoff, of course, to the late, great Bray Wyatt, who she worked with. Also, it's just intriguing. She's had a couple different gimmicks over her career. Little Miss Bliss was a fan favorite. But to come back with the doll, I thought was a choice. And we'll see if that continues, or if that was just kind of, hey, she's back. Let's buy, sell some more of these dolls. They might be making a lot of choices based on what they can sell in the stores, it seems like, these days with Jey Uso. So, that was interesting. Somewhat underwhelming. I don't want to say underwhelming in the ring. She just wasn't in the ring very long. She was eliminated somewhat quickly by Liv Morgan. Yeah,
huge pop, like you said, because they had been reporting even that morning she was having contract disputes, so they really swerved us on that one. But yeah, that place just went off, And another thing I'll talk about, and I'll say, I don't know entrances. I figured that out. I thought I was versed on it. Alexa Bliss was maybe one of 5 entrances. As soon as it played, I was like, I know who that is.
Yeah.
And I feel like the crowd noticed that too. It was dead silent until they said the name. But man, when Alexa came out, it was great. And when she came out, I was like, okay, maybe there's a chance she can win it. But yeah, she had a couple decent spots. I think she took out 2 people right away, and then she was kind of just in the mix, which is kind of a disappointment, because like we said, she was the biggest name, the biggest return. She's been gone for over 2 years now.
Yeah.
So, but I'm very excited to see her do something. Hopefully she goes to SmackDown and can kind of revive that roster there. But yeah, the whole Fiend thing. I was kind of hoping she wouldn't come back with that gimmick, but we'll see if it was a one-time thing, or, if they do something. I take it back. I don't want her on SmackDown. The Wyatt Six are there. I want her to go to Raw.
Can she save the Wyatt? Is it too late? I know at one time it felt like that would be great to put her together with Rowan and kind of get some of the group back together. Maybe Strowman make an appearance. But now that the group is what it has been, do you think it's too late for her to revive it?
I think it is, because what they should have done is had Nikki Cross then come into the Royal Rumble, had them interact.
Yeah. I'm surprised we didn't get a Nikki Cross.
She wasn't in there, which, there was a lot of active women that weren't in the Royal Rumble because they chose to go with surprises. One of them, we'll get to, really irked me and I did not like on there. But yeah, with no Nikki, I thought if they were going to save the Wyatt Six, it would have been that moment there.
Yeah. Interesting choice there. And that's kind of what I was, kind of pointing to earlier, is open up with the Io Sky again. Good fan reaction. Can you imagine the place if you started with Alexa Bliss out of the gate? That would have been incredible. They got the pop of the night one way or the other where they had it, so can't complain too much, but maybe that's what I would have done. Of course, I'm skipping over some entries, but just kind of getting to the interesting one. Trish Stratus making an appearance back in the Royal Rumble, and she's one, and I love this. They used to be able to do this more often. Now they've almost brought everybody back that, and even to Stratus, even herself, she's been back a few times. She's one, you look at Alexa Bliss and you say, oh, she's back on the active roster. You look at Nikki Bella, you say, oh, maybe she's back. Trish, I don't know if I necessarily think she's back or this was just a Rumble appearance.
Yeah, I think it's just a Rumble appearance because they tried it last year and the Trish rub didn't work on Zoe. She had an okay. Who'd she feud with? Is it Becky?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, the whole Becky and Trish feud that worked out a little bit, and then she kind of went away. But it's always nice to see Trish. You could probably say she's one of the top two, women's wrestler of all time. So to see her in there, I thought was fun. The crowd, loved it as well. With that, and the one thing I'll defend about the Alexa Bliss thing, not entering one, which I would have loved as well to see her kind of be an Iron Woman of this, is she did just have a kid. So I think, her conditioning is probably not up to par where it needs to be. So that's probably the reason why she came in at 21, I think is where she was there. But yeah, with the Trish thing, it's always nice to see her. And she still looks like, she's almost 50 and she looks like she could probably still do this, every day.
Yeah. Then we get to Charlotte Flair, Nikki Bella coming in. We're going to go pretty quick here. We actually have a Husker post game coming up. So we're going to be doing that here in about 10 minutes. So I want to go pretty quick through the rest of what we had. Charlotte did beat everybody else, end up winning this thing. Nikki Bella was there to do some push-ups. And it's funny because in the ring, or one of the announcers said, this is the best we've seen Nikki Bella all, since she's her career. And I thought, I don't think I've seen her do anything yet, but okay. Because she's not as much, in ring. She didn't really do too much. But so Charlotte wins that one. Nia Jax at one time eliminated 6 superstars. So that was pretty quick. But now Flair has the choice between Tiffany Stratton and Rhea Ripley. Again, because we got to go through this pretty quickly. We'll just jump to the men's Royal Rumble. Of course, DIY retained against Motor City Machine Gun. Also, ladder match between undisputed WWE champ Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens. Maybe match of the year. Just a brutal match. The spot that KO had to land on the back of the edge of the ladder was tough. Only outdone by the brutal Alabama slam from Cody to finish the match in the ladder. And he just looked like a body laying there. Yeah. Of course, Sammy was there, didn't interrupt, but was there. So that was kind of part of the story. But for a match that we knew for the last couple of months that Cody Rhodes was going to win, they sure did a good job, I think, with this feud, and especially the way you finish it is a big deal.
Yeah, you thought Cody unalived him. It was bad on that one. But yeah, I thought it was a great match. There were some times where I was like, they're kind of doing too much on it. But man, that finish was great. And Kevin Owens is probably going to be off TV for just a little bit. You'd think from that. But yeah, I think that was a great way to kind of conclude their feud that they've been having for the last couple months.
It sure was. No Randy Orton tonight. I thought maybe we'd see him there or in the Royal Rumble. Did not. They started the men's Royal Rumble with Rey Mysterio and Penta, which was just a great job to start. And then Chad Gable, of course, who had his luchador problems coming in. Penta, so wildly over with the crowd. He's kind of the new flavor of the month, I suppose, if you will. Akira Tozawa attempt to go in, but he ended up being injured before, so they put Aisho Speed in there, who took a huge spear from Braun Breaker, which was one of the highlights of the night. One of the lowlights for me is Ludwig Kaiser. Man, is that a barrier? Is that done? Is Ludwig Kaiser done? He went in for 2 seconds, was eliminated, was followed right behind that by The Miz, who I thought that spot would have worked better for. But I'm a Ludwig fan, so I didn't like that. But in any case, Joe Hendry came out. He's big with the crowd. I don't really get it. But then they had, of course, Roman Reigns enter at some point. Just all the names. AJ Styles making his return with his old music. Finn Balor with his new music, which got zero pop.
Yeah.
But I thought they did a really good job with John Cena, CM Punk, Seth Rollins, and then Dom Mysterio coming out of it together.
Oh man, Dom was an afterthought in this. I thought he'd get a huge pop, but after all that, and the one thing I'll say that was a little bit of a negative, I didn't like how nothing happened in the ring while John Cena, CM Punk, and Seth Rollins came in.
Just sat there.
They just sat there, and John Cena. I forgot how animated he gets and just how over the top he is, because everybody else is serious, and he's just like, it's Seth Rollins, it's CM Punk. Here we go. You know, I forgot how he gets with that. So that was kind of the one complaint in that area.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's kind of interesting. Of course, you finished off Sami Zayn, Damian Priest, LA Knight, and Logan Paul gets number 30 this year. But it also a big problem that I kind of had with this match at one point is that Punk, Rollins, and Reigns outside, they got eliminated. So Punk eliminates Rollins, Reigns. Eventually, Punk gets eliminated by Logan Paul. But there's this brutal, and maybe it's setting up the WrestleMania storyline between Rollins, Reigns, and Punk. But it was so much interest in the outside of the Royal Rumble when there's like 2 or 3 guys left in the Royal Rumble. And so it kind of overshadowed, but it also maybe made you think, okay, that's because John Cena is the obvious winner here. They end up going with Jey Uso, who has the best entrance, I suppose, and that's where about it stops for me. Worst spear. We saw another terrible spear from him, and they're going with them to the stipulation is if you win this, you headline WrestleMania. That's what they're saying, and I just don't know how you do that with Gunther, who them company themselves have not put they've done it over and over again for the Intercontinental and then for his championship, and they have not deemed this necessary to go for a premium live event until they get it to WrestleMania. Doesn't make much sense, and so the wrestling world is confused. A lot of people celebrating, love Jey Uso. You can say when the iron's hot, go with it. Maybe it's like Kofi Mania, maybe it's like Daniel Bryan, but it's not quite, because it's seemingly like it may have turned into that, but it got kind of force fed a little bit early here. So Jey Uso's number one in selling shirts right now and yeet glasses. Now I guess is going to wrestle, headline WrestleMania.
They saw him and his twin brother wrestle at WrestleMania, and that convinced them to be able to do this. I guess it's just, and I'm just at loss for words. Good for him. Awesome. Like you said, great entrance, good on the mic, not the best performer. We're going to see about 500 super kicks. And if they wanted him to win, and it seems like he's going to go after Gunther, right? Because that's kind of where they just had that match 8 days ago.
Right.
And here we go again. And he's lost to Gunther a couple times. Like, it just doesn't make sense with all this. And also Logan Paul just needs to get out of the WWE. He has nobody likes him anymore. He's kind of ruined his own career there. And the fact that he eliminated CM Punk, I think just kind of ruined it for a lot of people there.
Yeah, it is certainly interesting. That's why we opened up the show comparing it to an NBA trade that didn't make any sense. Is that a lot of people are left wondering, though there are a lot of people, they're fans of it. Again, he's wildly over. So maybe you feel like, strike when the iron's hot, but especially in a match where you had, John Cena, who said he's going afterwards, said he's going to go and win at an Elimination Chamber and be part of headline WrestleMania 2. So that's something to look out forward to. But you just had so many great options here. And they went with they went with that one. So very interesting stuff. We'll talk more about it. Nuclear Heat. We are with you every weekend, Sunday night at 9 o'clock. Of course, next week is the Super Bowl. So we will see about that. Programming might change a little bit, but we're here for your WWE wrestling needs, and we will be back. We're going to take a quick break, and then quickly we're going to do a Nebraska post-game show for basketball as they beat Oregon, their second top 25 victory in a row. The most they've had all in any year is 4. They've tied that now. We'll do that next year on 93.7 The Ticket.
What's it take to be